It's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
Hello and welcome. He is Gary McNamara. I'm Eric Harley. As we begin a Friday, Gary, hello. How are you?
I'm doing very well, and all right. Memorial Day weekend begins.
Yeah.
Well, to me, it always begins on the Friday because
right. Of course.
When we get out of here by 5 and then go to sleep and wake up, it's
5 a.m. is our weekend. That's our 5 o'clock.
Well, you're right.
Yeah.
Friday is actually my Saturday, and Saturday is actually my Sunday. Sunday is actually my Monday.
Well,
we're always one day ahead.
But Monday's the new Tuesday. 90's the next is the new 40. I called my dad yesterday for his birthday. 92 yesterday. I said, "Hello, young man." He says, "I think you got the wrong number." Happy birthday, young man. Oh, you're talking to the wrong person. Hold on. Let me look around and see if there's anyone young in this house. Nope. I got to go. It's funny. The first time I called him, he was on a business call, my mom said. He can't talk to you right now. Can you call him back later? He's on a business call. I'm like, what is he doing? Turns out, inspired by Elon Musk and his purchase of Twitter, my dad bought MySpace. $14. It's a pretty good deal. He was on, so I call him back later, and he was actually on the phone renegotiating or signing up for new service for his electricity. And he goes, "My brain is so fried." He goes, "How much do you guys pay?" I said, "No." I said, "My wife handles that. That's one I don't even want to get into. I mean, I understand it all, but I just don't even like talking or negotiating that thing. Sorry. Because I get into it and I'll just micromanage it to death. And my wife knows that. And anyway, so he was, just going on about that and, kilowatt hours and everything else. He goes, "Man, it's just getting more expensive." I said, "It's because we have more wind and solar in the grid, and that's the truth."
Yeah,
But he had he was having at that point. It was mid morning. He was having a good birthday so far. We're gonna finish it up with a big barbecue on Saturday. It's going to be a good day. And I always kind of pair Memorial Day weekend with his birthday because it's always within days, within a week or so of Memorial Day, it being on the 22nd, Memorial Day being where it is. And Dad being a two-time war veteran and always knowing and being mindful of the fact that I'm fortunate that my father was able to come home twice. Once long before he was my father, and in the Korean conflict, and the second time when I was 4 in the Vietnam conflict. So the weekend that we take to honor those who gave their lives for freedom is not lost on me, as I grew up with, and I guess many of us did really in the 70s. There was a decent chance we knew somebody or we were related to somebody who did not come home. And I'm just ever mindful of that. It's not just around Memorial Day, but I'm grateful that our nation at least takes a day, a weekend to honor those. As we talk about, on this show and others, by the way, this show wouldn't exist without the freedoms that we have.
No,
we wouldn't be able to do what we do. Social media wouldn't exist. The View wouldn't exist. We'll get into that later. I'm not saying that would be a bonus. I would rather have The View around for all of the reasons. But it's it's just one of those things, and I wonder as I'm, as I walk out, I keep my flag up, have it lit at night, and I'm mindful of that. And it comes from being, I think, to a large extent, a military brat. But really, the way that I was raised, I think if my father was not military, had not been military, I probably would feel the same way, because I don't think his values would be different. There would be a very good reason he didn't serve. He would, if he had some physical limitations or something that kept him from serving. But those are the things that we look at. One of the stories that I always, and I just learned this several years ago, when he got into the Navy at the age of 18, he hitchhiked to the what's now the Fort Worth Naval Air Station, the Joint Reserve Base, or the Joint Base here, here just down the road from where we are, in North Texas, and then he's all of a sudden on the USS Samuel N. Moore, serving in the Navy, heading to Korea. And it was, I think he said it wasn't long in, maybe a month and a half in, he gets a letter from the Army, "You've been drafted." And he looks at his direct supervisor and says, "Well, what do I tell him?" The guy says, "Tell him you're busy. You've got something to do." So, you think about those generations who went, your father serving during World War II time. And, you think about my grandfather enlisting at the age of 38. I mean, that's old, and going into the war, fought in the Battle of the Bulge, and again, he was able to come home. But you think about all of those families, because I think about my mom when I was 4. My dad went over to the Vietnam conflict, and it didn't hit me until later. I mean, obviously, I just didn't have the wherewithal to put it all together. But as an adult, here's my mom, who quite possibly could have ended up as a single parent of 5 children, including a not quite 1-year-old baby when my dad left, my younger sister. And that was the case as many wars and conflicts over the years. I was watching a documentary about the hunt for Osama bin Laden. We know about the wars in recent years. We know about the effort in Afghanistan. We talked about the botched exit of Afghanistan. 13 service members did not come home. And it's just important that we're ever mindful of that service and those individuals who are willing to serve and fully understand that risk.
Well, when my dad was never in combat. Just to make it clear, he is a disabled veteran, but he went in with he graduated from high school in 43. He was supposed to go in 44. He was 4F because of his foot. He had a bad foot. And so, but come, I think it was the summer of 45 when he was then drafted, and I think by October of 45, so the war was over, is when he got to Tokyo. I mean, he saw the end of it. But my father, at 19 years of age, was a teacher. He was he was the one. He was a teacher for all the mechanics. Everybody was a higher rank than he was.
Yeah,
he was. I think he was a corporal.
Yeah.
And I think they made him a corporal because he was a teacher, but he was an instructor of how to do maintenance on military trucks at 19.
Yeah.
He just, he knew enough. I mean, by that time, I think he'd already rebuilt an engine of his own, in his own car. He had no professional experience, but when he went in and he knew everything about
just a natural engineer.
Yeah, vehicles. It was like, that's what you do. And then because of being in there, and I guess basic training and everything else, his foot got a lot worse, and so he became. I don't know what the percentage he is, but he is he's considered a disabled veteran, and he always has fun when. I mean, he doesn't anymore because all of his friends are gone.
Yeah,
but he used to have a lot of his friends were a couple of years younger. Well, I served in Korea, and his favorite line was, "Oh, really? Oh, the mop up. I was in the big one." And they all go, "You don't even have combat." He just smiled. But when you think about it, and when we think about it, everything is based on the fact that people have been willing and have sacrificed everything. They've died, and that's what Memorial Day is about. It's about the people that died, and most of them died before they ever got to experience what I have, or you have, or anybody else in life.
Well, I think about my grandfather. He goes in Camp Walters here in Texas, and then is sent over to World War II, fights in the Battle of the Bulge, because he was a truck driver here. So what did they do? Tank. Boom. Like you said.
Wow.
17th Tank Battalion, 7th Armored Division. And, I wish there were more that he had been able to share about that service and what he saw. But you can only imagine. It's the Battle of the Bulge. The one thing, the only thing that sticks in my mind that my mom's oldest sister told me is that when he wrote home, the only thing he ever complained about, and it was just the one time, was that it's really cold and our jackets aren't big enough. And that's it. I mean, that was it. And what you see, my dad in the Korean conflict, and yes, it was a serious war. Of course it was. Still has PTSD. Vietnam, same thing. And so, you think about what quite often that PTSD is related to is witnessing the loss of life of someone who's right next to you. And there are countless individuals who have to live with those issues, PTSD, which is one of those unseen wounds that is a very, very critical wound. And my father has dealt with that since he came home. And as a child, I didn't experience any of those effects. My mom, every once in a while, hints at things, and he's doing great. But it is very often about witnessing again and being close to someone who then in an instant is not there. I mean, for us civilians who didn't serve, if you didn't serve in wartime, it's you really can't have that experience. And my dad didn't share it. My grandfather didn't share it, and many don't. But it's always in my mind because I knew I had a handful of friends whose fathers did not come home. Lieutenant Earl Brown, his son David, and I were dear friends until he passed a few years ago. And we grew up together, just had great times together as kids. We're still friends. We were still friends as adults and had reunions, and just a very good man, a very, very good man. And by all accounts, his father was too. And he was very young when his father went over. And I remember seeing his father's picture for the first time hanging in their home on the wall. And movie star good looks. I mean, it looked like the headshot out of Hollywood. It really did. It looked like something a picture you would put on a wall in a movie. Oh, that's my loved one, because it was, he's just a stellar looking individual. And you could tell, you could see his personality in his eyes. You could see who he was as an individual through that picture. When I started learning that as a kid, as a child, that my father, and started realizing my dad got to come home. And I'm great friends with people who suffer because their loved ones didn't. And it's all, every bit of it, for our liberties. That's what they were fighting for. And still today, people lose their lives for our liberties. And we should never, ever forget that.
And that's why I've always said I owe this country everything.
Yes.
Country doesn't owe me a damn thing.
Yeah.
Because there are people that have sacrificed everything, their life,
Right.
and at a young age.
Yep.
Not 80-year-olds aren't fighting.
Yeah.
And when you think about that, and when you do this for a living, and you come on and you do this, and no fear of the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I don't. I mean, there are times when government has been intimidating. You go back to 2020, whatever, and all that.
Yeah.
But I still never had any fear. Think about that. The only reason I've never had any fear to do this is because somebody is willing to lay down their life.
Yep.
So we got a great show ahead, more on Memorial Day, too. 866-90 Red Eye.
Hi there, this is Hope Zavara with Mother Trucker Yoga. And here's your health tip of the day. Healthy driver, healthy diesel, powered by Howes. Truck drivers are at high risk for carpal tunnel and grip issues from long hours at the wheel, leading to pain, stiffness, and weakness over time. Let's fix that right at the wheel. Using your steering wheel, stretch one finger at a time, starting from your thumb to your pinky. Hold each of those for 10 seconds. Then place all 4 fingers on the wheel and gently press and stretch your palm and wrist. Hold for another 10 seconds. Don't forget to do the other hand. Do this 2 to 3 times a day to keep your hands mobile, strong, and ready for action. There you go. Small, simple changes that can lead to big results so you can feel good again. Visit mothertruckeryoga.com and howesproducts.com for more tips and support.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90 Red Eye.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome and good morning. We'll have more to say on Memorial Day weekend here, and Memorial Day on Monday coming up here. Just a ton of different news out there. The big "You've Got a Nice Personality" bill passed yesterday. We'll get to it. Actually, some you know where the Republican Party is going, and we've criticized the fact of the whole debt thing. The Republican Party, and we said this earlier this week, the Republican Party is becoming, and they did it here in the budget bill, they are becoming a very, and I agree with this totally, they're becoming a much more a conservative culture party, and you saw this in this bill, where there's a ton of things that they at least, that they cut out. But the Republican Party is turning into fiscal socialists. Mm-hmm. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
They don't care about the debt. The American public doesn't care about the debt. And it's okay. We said a long time ago, look, these things, they have their ebb and flow. And we had said that a long time ago when people would call this show, Republicans would call this show, when the Republicans, again, weren't as concerned about the national debt anymore and said, you guys just worry too much about the debt. And then inflation hit, and everything that we had said with the debt, with printing money to buy our own debt in order to try to keep the interest rates low, all of the manipulation of our currency while we were screaming, China's manipulating their currency. We were talking about this in 2012. Mm-hmm. Well, what the hell you think we're doing? We're doing the same damn thing.
Right, of course.
And so, but we felt the inflation. We know what debt will do. We've seen it. And the American public has said, that's okay, including the majority of Republicans now. That's a shame.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app, available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. So here we go. So the good stuff from the Republican Party. You saw the Senate voted to end the California EV quota, and the House did it already, and so that's going to end, which is great. That's wonderful. When you look at the bill, I think the big you have a wonderful personality bill. I think you came up. Did I come up with that, or you come up? You came up with that the other day, didn't you?
Yeah.
There's good things to it. You had to continue the tax cuts. You wanted those to continue, but the best part of it you destroyed.
Yeah.
The best part of it, when it came to SALT, you destroyed, and the only reason is to bail out blue states. But when you look at a ton of stuff that was done, there was still stuff that wasn't done. For example, if you could not axe the entire Green New Deal spending now, if you don't have the guts to do it, then I don't know what to say. If you don't have the guts to say that able-bodied males should not get more federal funds than pregnant single mothers in Medicaid, if you don't have the guts to do that, which doesn't take a lot of guts, you're never going to get, what you want. This bill does show that, and I'm happy with this, that you have a Republicans in Congress that will vote not to spend money on the liberal cultural idiocy out there, which is great. That's a positive. But when it comes to the overall budget, and I haven't seen the official score yet, and I guess we've done it's anywhere between $3.5 trillion to $5 trillion increase in spending. Increase in the deficit over what the baseline was. So this Republican bill makes the debt growth a lot worse than it was before this bill was signed. And I say this, and I understand, the limitations that we have in Congress, but the limitations that we have in Congress is also based on the Republican voter and the independent voter out there. It's what they want. We talked about the CNN poll the other day that showed 74%, the group of people that want tax cuts, even if the deficit increases, 74% of Republicans said yes. Now, the Democrats, 55% of Democrats said no, but they're lying, and we all know it. That's just an anti-Trump vote. But it's where the country is going. It is sad because, remember, where did MAGA begin? How did Donald Trump, what was the first thing that got MAGA going? You go back to October of 15. And it was when Paul Ryan became Speaker of the House and Boehner was gone. And you told me we had this discussion in our pre-show meeting. You said, my God, can you believe Boehner's been gone almost a decade?
He's smoking more than ever. He smokes 200 packs a day. You may think that's not possible. It is, and he does it. I could be wrong and could be making that up right now, but I'm not.
What really got the MAGA movement going in this country was debt reduction.
Yeah.
It's when Paul Ryan came in. The whole swamp was Republicans that wouldn't cut. That's how MAGA was created. It was about Paul Ryan would not redo the deal that Boehner had made with the Democrats and the Obama White House. He wouldn't bring it back and say, no, we need to cut. And that's really what got the excitement of MAGA going.
Yeah.
And you had the president in his campaign in the first term say, we're going to balance the budget. He said it a couple months ago again. One of his highest priorities is to cut the budget. That was 2 months ago.
Yeah.
The complete opposite happened.
Mm-hmm.
MAGA on fiscal issues is 180 degrees from what created MAGA in 2015, in the fall of 2015, when the excitement really built about Trump. It's when I had said at the point where I remember saying it that, on the issues that he brought up, I said, Trump's bringing up the issues that people are concerned about. And he's talking about possible different solutions because, remember, people forget one of the solutions he came up with was we could sell our pay off our debt pennies on the dollar.
Yeah,
it's like, well, no,
right.
You can't do that. You can't.
Right.
It'd be a complete disaster. And so he backed off on that one. But the entire MAGA movement was created, and I don't think I haven't heard this anywhere. You and I have talked about this for the longest time. The entire MAGA movement on fiscal issues with the budget, that was what created the excitement of MAGA in the fall of 2015, is now the complete opposite of what it was back then.
Mm.
I haven't seen anyone who calls himself MAGA question saying this isn't what we were.
Well, no.
This isn't what we were
right.
9.5 years ago.
It's quite the opposite. You need to primary Chip Roy if he votes against the bill.
Right. He's a rhino. We're MAGA. Mm-hmm. Well, Chip Roy is where MAGA was 9.5 years ago.
Yeah.
Exactly where MAGA was.
Right.
That's a shame. That's a wasted opportunity. And what you needed was the leadership of all Republicans to promote it over and over again. But I will agree with you, because of the makeup of Congress, it's almost impossible to get that through. But that is because of the makeup. It is Republicans year in and year out promising that we're going to cut and never cutting. And the public got upset about it in 2015.
Mm-hmm. By the way, to be clear, Chip Roy voted yes on the bill.
Oh, yeah, you're right. He did.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he issued a statement as to why. And I said earlier this week, if he votes yes, it's over.
Yeah.
If in the era of DOGE and Chip Roy, we can't get this done, it's not going to happen.
And to me, that's the disappointment of it. And you can throw on top of it the whole hype on DOGE that went on and on and on for the first 2 months. We're cutting. We're going to do this. It's going to be $2 trillion. It's going to be $1 trillion. Throwing out all of these numbers that you and I questioned. We were criticized for questioning those numbers, by the way. We were criticized severely for that. We weren't wrong. Not $2 trillion. It's not $1 trillion. It's not $150 billion. It's not $100 billion that we're cutting. It's zero that we're cutting. We're adding to the overall deficit. Cutting is not saying we're cutting here and spending 5 times more the amount over here.
That's like saying you saved 20% on $1 million purchase. Look, I cut my expenses by $200,000. No, you didn't.
And so even then, there's some really good things in this bill that get rid, because I view the whole EV thing, that's a left-wing cultural issue that's based on BS, the whole EV thing.
Yeah.
And so the Republicans, very good on that. But on fiscal sanity, overall fiscal sanity, the Republican Party and the people of the Republican Party, because they no longer care about it, have failed this country.
Yep.
In my humble opinion.
Yep.
And I understand the reality of where we are now, but the fact is, the whole goal of not the whole goal, but one of the major goals of the MAGA movement that created the excitement in the fall of 2015 was based on fiscal sanity and getting rid of the debt. And just 2 months ago, the president said it again. That's his goal. And Republicans were saying the same thing with DOGE and all this, and it was a line of horse manure. That's what it ended up being.
And again, our audience notwithstanding, but the rank and file Republicans don't care.
Yeah.
The Republican voters, the majority of them, clearly don't care.
And it's sad.
That's the
sad
thing,
because
there's
not going to be another chance to save it. This was the hype. This was the movement.
Yeah.
DOGE was, done for. As I've said, the president initiating DOGE was one of the greatest things I've ever seen a president do. And Elon Musk getting involved in it because it was an opportunity to market the problems that we have. They marketed the problem, but they way over-exaggerated what they could do. And to come out with this budget now, as we said before, you don't hear anything coming from Republicans about DOGE. Mm-hmm. You don't hear them bringing the cuts because you can't do it and justify the budget that you just passed. Right. So DOGE is dead.
Well,
you took all of this. I think this entire marketing thing, and it just went poof like that. And I said DOGE was the greatest thing because there was no upside to it.
Yeah.
There's no up. You start cutting, there's no upside. They're not really cutting much at all, and you hear the Democrats pounding on it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, it's sad because I fear for future generations. And I've said it before, the greatest immorality that we have done domestically, and now Republicans have signed off on it. The biggest morality we've been involved in is putting what we want today on the backs of future generations. This country was built on taxation without representation. Democrats really ignited it. They found the loophole. Now Republicans are going right through that loophole, which is, okay, taxation without representation. We can't get that people that are alive now. The people that aren't born yet, they're the ones who get no representation. We'll put the debt on them. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest immorality we have done. We've talked about this before. Everybody knows we've had this opinion. I've had this opinion since I've been paying attention and since I've been a talk show host since 1989. It's the biggest immorality, and everybody just shrugs it off as it's not important. It's no big deal. Put it off, put it off, put it off, put it off. You're exaggerating it here. Inflation comes along as a direct result of the debt we built up. People for a moment say, well, maybe we should be cutting a little bit, and then boom, we're right back to where we are again.
Mm-hmm.
So if you want to say it's the best that we could do, fine. Don't celebrate this as beautiful because it's not.
Well,
when it comes to deficit reduction or the debt,
it shows you exactly where we are as a nation.
It does. Yes, it does.
We don't care.
Yeah.
And if we don't care about this, I don't know what you care about. Because, the fight was really over things that people don't want to see, and that's cuts.
Yeah.
The pain. Well, the pain will be unimaginable when the collapse finally happens, whenever that might be.
And the fact is, I'm not personally going to be affected by it. You and I have been, railing on this since we've been talk show hosts.
Right.
I'll be dead
mm-hmm.
before it all. I'll be dead and buried when this all hits. And it's been probably the number one topic I've been concerned about since 1989.
Mm-hmm.
And even Republicans have just said, oh, you worry too much about that. You worry too much about that. You worry too much about that.
Mm-hmm.
I guess personally, when I was a bill collector early in my life, I've seen what debt does.
Yeah.
I see what it does. I see how, debt that's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Not just debt in general, but debt that's out of control.
Mm-hmm.
Overextending. I don't care whether it's an individual. I don't care whether it's a company. I don't care whether it's a country. Only bad things come from it.
Yep.
866-90-RED-EYE.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here this morning. But like I said, the gas-powered cars, at least getting rid of part of it. But on the infrastructure the whole infrastructure thing. They should have just cut that out right now. Because that did nothing, and they couldn't do it. And if they can't do that, and they can't take away Medicaid from able-bodied people, then we're never going to get anything done. And that's the sad part. The sad part is realizing it's over.
Yeah.
There is not going to be any fiscal sanity coming from, definitely, it's not going to come from Democrats. Now that Republicans officially have put out the white flag and said, we cannot control the debt. We can't control the interest on the debt. There's nothing that we can do about it. That's what happened yesterday when it came to the fiscal sanity of this nation, the medium and long-term fiscal sanity, and even the short-term, because we have felt what debt has done with the inflation we've all felt over the last couple of years. We all know what causes it.
Yep.
And we've said, put up the white flag. We can't beat it. We can't save ourselves from ourselves.
Right.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, he is Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Memorial Day weekend 2025. I think about just when I was young and, Memorial Day would hit and I was a Boy Scout and we would always march in the Memorial Day parade. And after the Memorial Day parade, and that took, probably, it started at 9, probably ended at, 10:30 by the time we got back to the house. It was time for Dad to turn on the Indy 500. And I remember the Indy 500 back then was only on the radio. They did not carry it live. It was always tape delayed. And so your imagination, you did theater of the mind. So while that was starting, Dad would be out there with the charcoal that he, of course, soaked in gasoline. And we didn't have the modern lighters like we have today. So it was taking the match, throwing it through the air, hoping it would hit and go.
Yeah, and let's be clear. The modern day lighter fluid, is that still legal? Even the modern day lighter fluid, it's pretty much just fuel.
I will not be bringing it on the plane,
No.
any lighter fluid on the plane a couple of hours from now.
No, you got to be careful now what kind of battery you bring on a plane.
Yeah, I saw that also, yeah. I've got I have a wallet-size one, so they know that's not 100 milliwatts or more because now they're getting tougher on, you bringing, you bringing, and I like the little one. It's credit card size.
Right,
but I like it just in an emergency. I can carry it anywhere.
Right.
I love taking that one to concerts. If I want to film something or a sporting event, it's
if you've got your camera going where it's going to constantly drain.
Yeah.
And you want that backup for sure.
And this thing probably will recharge my phone just, once probably back to 100, maybe once, maybe 120% of what it is. So but we'll talk about what's going on this weekend travel-wise here in a little bit. So, I think about that, and the garage door would be open. I can still remember, I don't know what make it was, the leather-wrapped radio that my dad had out on the garage. Could have been fake leather, I don't know, but it was leather-wrapped, this radio, and it's playing the Indy 500. And, somebody, of course, remember A.J. Foyt, Parnelli Jones. All the late Jim Clark, who was a great racer, and I say late, a lot of them are dead, not the people some of the people I mentioned are not, A.J. I think still alive, right? A.J. Foyt's still alive, isn't he? I don't know. Wow. Go check for me, will you?
Yeah, he's still alive.
Okay, good. Yeah. I thought he was. And
he's 90.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then there was a local guy who used to race, and he had a tire place, Jim Hurtubise. Didn't have a big, didn't have a massive amounts of money behind him, but he was in the race a couple of years, so we were always rooting for him. But for me, what really makes it a part of Memorial Day, and I don't know if they do it anymore. There's a lot of questions whether they do or whether it's the televised portion of it, but it's the Indy 500, as they called it, the introduction, the homage or whatever, and that's what always got to me. I don't know why, but that voice over the radio saying, quote, "On this Memorial Day weekend, we pause here in a moment of silence to pay homage to those individuals, who have given their lives unselfishly and unafraid to make it possible for us as free men and women to enjoy the world's greatest sporting event." That simple line right there. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not going to argue whether it's the world's greatest sporting event. That isn't the part that got to me. We all know that it's pickleball now.
I thought it was cricket.
It's cricket.
We know it's not soccer.
Well, don't say that, because in my town we built a cricket stadium.
Well, how's that going?
I don't know. I haven't been to a game. I've seen a couple of photos, and it looks like a lot of people go.
Is it a game or a match?
I don't know. They're all games.
Yeah.
What's the difference? On today's show, we are going to discuss the controversy. Is it a game or a match?
That's funny because I was watching the documentary about the hunt for and ultimate killing of Osama bin Laden. And one of the guys on Navy SEAL Team 6 says, when we're leaving the compound with his body in tow, and we're in the helicopter, and then jets have scrambled, the Pakistani government has scrambled their jets, and we've got 90 minutes to get to Afghanistan. And he's like, as the closer we get, I start thinking about the 1980 do you believe in miracles hockey match. And he says, he goes, because he said, frankly, we wrote letters to our loved ones before that mission. We didn't believe, none of us believed we were coming home. And he said, it was that moment, and they were showing clips from the hockey match from 1980. And he says, and the first time I ever heard these words, and it actually sounded great, "Gentlemen, welcome to Afghanistan." And then they showed the hockey game and the people cheering and the whole thing.
But what you just said there, we're going on a mission where none of us believed we were coming back, and they're doing it anyway.
This is one thing that was reverberating through my mind as I'm watching this. I saw something. It was a TED Talk from years ago from the actor Adam Driver. He was in one of the newer Star Wars movies. He's been in a number of movies. He's a good actor. And he talked about joining the Marines just a few months after 9/11 and why he wanted to go. He wanted to go over. And he hurt his back, and he watched his fellow Marines be deployed to Afghanistan, and he couldn't go. And, and he just said that, just this disappointment. But I'm thinking in my mind, well, here's a guy who knew. And one of many who knew they were going over, that they're joining to go over. They're signing up for it. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's just one of those things where you can't possibly put your mind there. For those of us who didn't serve, if it's just impossible to put your mind there. But where we can put our minds is with the most gratitude. And at every turn, protecting our Constitution any way and every way that we can. We owe that to them. As you mentioned earlier, You feel like you owe that. We all do. And still the debt will never be repaid, but it's what we can do. Again, for those of us who didn't serve, now those of us who are, older and everything else, we owe it every single day to protect our freedoms in any way that we can, expressing ourselves, voting, and then just experiencing all of our liberties.
Well, yeah, and doing the things that you want to do.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure the soldiers that have died would have said, if all you're going to do is mourn me and not be productive and not make the country better.
Yeah, we have to experience all of our liberties.
Right.
Every day we should and be mindful of that. I've heard people say, wow, I didn't realize how great we had it until I traveled to other parts of the world. And we do.
This, when I read the preamble, I guess they called it, and I don't know if they do it on the live broadcast anymore. I don't know. I just have not watched the Indy 500 in a number of years. Now it's live on TV, but back then it was only on the radio. But that is really what formed my thoughts on Memorial Day. Yeah. That always hit me so hard. When I just read the preamble from the Indy 500, I still get chills. I didn't know I was going to get chills when I read it on the air just a little while ago. When I got to the point, it says, on this Memorial Day weekend, we pause here in a moment of silence to pay homage to those individuals who have given their lives unselfishly and unafraid to make it possible for us as free men and women. And right there is where I get emotional right at that point to enjoy the world's greatest sporting event. It always hit me. It always made me understand the seriousness of Memorial Day. Well, it's Memorial Day is not supposed to be a celebration. Not that people aren't going to have picnics and think about it and do things like that. That's fine, but you need to reflect. And we have a significant portion of our population that doesn't even realize, that live in a delusional world and have no idea that everything that they do is built on the sacrifice of others. Yeah. And that's why I've said I've never believed the country owes me anything. Right. I owe this country everything because of the people that have done it. And what have they fought for? And you said it before. They fought for the Constitution of the United States. That's what they fought for.
Yep.
And probably there's not a greater thing that you could fight for, on this planet.
Right.
When you look at the history of the United States of America and the Constitution and the influence that it's had, not saying, again, because the criticism will be there, you're making it sound like we never make a mistake. No, we're all human beings. In any human endeavor, wrong things are done. Not saying that everybody that's ever been in this country is, how could I pull that off? Everybody who's ever served this country in politics has always been honorable. No, we're not saying that either. What we're saying is...
Each one of them is infallible. Right.
Yeah. Or fallible.
Or fallible.
Fallible.
Well, no, I was saying try and make the...
Oh, yes.
They are infallible.
Right, that there are infallible.
No, say that out loud and see how ridiculous it sounds.
But that's what really made me understand the seriousness of Memorial Day. And I think one of the greatest things, remember when, was it the History Channel that put together, and they did it. They got all the World War II veterans so they could document it. And then they had, and the ones that were dead that wrote letters, they had famous actors. I remember, what's his name from Office Space was one of the soldiers. I can't think of his name now. What's his name on Office Space? The lead actor on Office Space. He was
Gary Cole?
No. He wasn't the lead. It was what's his name? I can't think of it. Ron. I can't think of his name. You know who I mean? Jennifer Aniston's boyfriend in the movie. Ron Livingston. Yes. Yeah. He was one of the. He was, he narrated as one of the soldiers from World War II, and when you see what they went through, and knowing what they went through, you think about, for example, and I know every war has its horror, but when you think about, for example, just Iwo Jima in World War II, the number of the thousands of people we were losing a week.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just was the fear of the kamikazes. You go back and you look at those naval veterans from World War II, and the documentaries that they've been on about the pure terror of that.
Sure.
All the things that went on in every war. Just using World War II as an example. It's unbelievable what people have done, so we can just go through our normal lives.
Well, you think of all the young men coming ashore on the beaches of Normandy.
Oh my God. Yeah.
Very, very young, which is why I pointed out for my grandfather, 38, he was an old man compared to so many.
When you see the beginning of Saving Private Ryan, and the veterans that were alive said that was realism, that was realistic, it's pure horror.
Yeah.
Because they knew going in what was going to happen.
Right.
I mean, you talk about the concept of sacrifice.
Yeah. And then ask the question, how many are truly willing to make it? It's...
Well, not if most of us won't make it, but do you appreciate it?
Sure.
At the minimum, do you appreciate it and recognize it? That most of us won't do that. So the next thing is,
you're saying we won't.
We won't
voluntarily do that. We don't have the will to do that.
No. We just won't do that. We
don't ever do that. Yeah, I was talking about just think about the mindset of the will to say, I understand fully what I'm going into.
Yeah.
That's we know how the drafts work. We know, how that's happened. But think about the mindset of knowing what you're going into and then doing it anyway.
Yeah.
My gosh.
I know. 866-98-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Most owner-operators leased to larger carriers are paid on a per-mile basis or a percentage of revenue per load. The per-mile basis is most prevalent among larger fleets. Percentage at smaller. Pay per mile tends to dominate discussions about pay just because it's easier to measure, and pay per mile often is wrongly used as the deciding factor in leasing to a carrier. While pay per mile can be a vital factor, it's not a cure for every ill, nor does it mean a big settlement check is coming an owner-operator's way. Why? Because pay per mile always must be considered in balance with gross revenue as well as total costs. Gross revenue can include flat mileage pay that varies by length of haul, percentage revenue pay, and more. Most importantly, though, for every revenue dollar generated, only part of that dollar is profit. But for every extra dollar of cost saved, the entire dollar contributes to profit. Knowing and understanding your cost to operate is fundamental to understanding the true value of any pay package. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley and I'm Gary McNamara. Really got interesting yesterday, the autopen stuff. I mean, it's just, that thing is just growing each and every day. And I thought about it. I go, this is 10 times greater than Watergate.
Oh, my gosh.
This is 1,000,000 times greater than Watergate. And, now they know who appears have used the autopen. And, the book talks about, that there were three. No, I'm sorry. It wasn't that. It was the weaponization director. Ed Martin saying they believe 3 people were the ones making the decisions, and they were making money off of their decisions, is the allegation.
Right.
That's from Ed Martin said, the whistleblower said.
So listen to this headline from NBC News. House Republicans to zero in on autopen use as part of investigation into Biden's health. The probe comes amid renewed scrutiny about Biden's mental and physical fitness in office. It's actually accurate from NBC News. No,
I weren't sure where you were going.
Not without, with zero basis to it, they're going to look into. No, it's happening.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And he's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. I could be wrong, but to me, yesterday was just one of the days that it seemed like that the whole, the autopen thing just took off. And the autopen thing is basically you've got this small group of people around Biden that were running the government. That's what it comes down to. The autopen is how they, is what the allegation is, how they abuse that. Interesting, the whistleblower that went to Ed Martin. And Ed Martin said, look, I'm not sure if I believe him or not, but the whistleblower coming in and they'll be looking for whatever evidence the whistleblower could provide that it was basically 3 people and they were making money off using the autopen. And so that means they were putting through executive orders that made it so they made money. I mean, that's the only way you could look at it, is that what was going on. And James Comer yesterday was on Fox News and and talked about everything that's going on. Here we go.
Say that, no, they just talked to Joe Biden and he was tip-top. He was in great physical condition. He was at the top of his game. Now they're coming back covering the track saying, yeah, it looks like he was in mental decline. Well, we all know he's in mental decline. What we need to know is who was calling the shots at the White House. And one thing that was also mentioned on your show thus far is that when you sign a document that has legal implications, it has to be signed personally. It can't be signed by an autopen. You use autopen for proclamations and mass letters and things like that. So I think that if we can understand more about the autopen and whether or not Joe Biden authorized it, I think this could lead to a lot of those executive orders being kicked out in court.
Interesting.
Well, and that's it. Because you look at it, we have to know what was true and what wasn't. And you start with the question, well, how do we trust anything? Nobody is now trying to say there were no cognitive issues. Because if you're trying to defend this and saying, in terms of looking into the actions of former President Biden as president, then you would have to say, if you're defending it, well, no, we can't do that because sometimes he was, well, wait a minute, no. Your only position could be he didn't have any cognitive issues. See the former Joe Scarborough on that one, but we're not there anymore. So there is no defense of it. You can't make the case that every action by Joe Biden as president is in question. You can't make the case that it's just off the table now. We can't review it. There is every reason to believe that every single one of his presidential actions has to be greatly scrutinized as to what happened on that day as he took those actions. You look at the autopen use, and you start there, and you also start with witnesses. Because what it comes down to as well is This isn't even about Joe Biden. It is about his actions and which of those executive orders should be challenged along the way. I think each one of them, actually. It's also about the cover-up. And it's also about if he wasn't in charge, then who took it upon themselves to use no authority of their own, but that autopen in order to get something done? You have to look into people manipulating this. And again, the possibility, I don't know if I can speak for you on this. I think we're on the same page with the whistleblower. We're kind of the same mindset. I am. I don't know if I trust the whistleblower. It's, we'll see what happens. You have to come with, evidence, and there has to be more testimony. There has to be something else. I don't know what happened, but if.
Well, and Ed Martin's saying he doesn't know if he trusts the whistleblower.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying, too. Right. I'm saying I agree with Ed Martin, and I don't, so I don't know what happened. What I would say here is investigate it. There is a way to find out. You may not get to the end result you want very quickly, but it doesn't mean we shouldn't pursue it.
Well, if you look at the book, and by the way, I just love how everyone now is on the fact that, well, they didn't write the book. They didn't write, that Jake Tapper didn't write the book in order to expose what was going on. We all figured what was going on. He wrote the book to exonerate himself and journalists to say, they just fooled us. We had no idea. And I love how that's being pounded against Jake Tapper in the media right now because it's true.
Yeah.
We all knew it. And, as we have said, for Jake, I'm a serious investigative. Well, how do you become an investigative reporter? You look at things and you observe things that aren't right. Well, you were one of the biggest enablers of Biden when he was president. You went after Lara Trump. Now he's actually apologized to her now, saying, okay, I was wrong. I was wrong for doing it. But that's just because he was pressured to do it. They were trying, the book to me is a CYA because the next thing you need to go to is who did it.
Yeah.
And what did they do? And now with the autopen and Ed Martin on it, and just, more books coming out. And if the whistleblower is accurate, but the book itself is so damning. And nobody, The View, the Whoopi, and nobody's paying attention to what Whoopi said. Whoopi said that, well, should they be doing a source story on something like this?
Yeah.
And everybody went, oh, yeah. But nobody else but The View, but nobody takes The View seriously.
No, they don't.
They really don't. I mean, it's nobody in what you may have their audience, it does, but nobody seriously looks at the View because when a show has to have lawyers on staff in real time monitoring everything that you say and giving you legal notes so you don't cost them hundreds of millions, possibly billions of dollars because you keep defaming people or saying things that are wrong. You got a problem with your show. And we'll get to that here in a little bit because there's that story out there that the Disney boss at Bob Iger and another ABC exec asked the View host to cool it on politics.
Well, yeah, if your parent company, if it is true and accurate, that their parent company is like, would you guys just tone it down? Really? Tone it down. But by the way, don't everybody should make sure that Hillary doesn't find out that the patriarchy at Disney is telling the ladies of The View to tone it down.
It's the patriarchy. It's the that's what it is. It's the patriarchy again.
Well, it's
the liberal patriarchy.
Yeah, and as they say around Disney, it's a litigious world after all.
But what it gets down to, and everybody knows it, and you're going to hear this term more, the allegations are telling the American people there was a shadow government, that the president of the United States was not making every decision.
Yeah.
I saw the other day, who was it, Joe Scarborough and Mark Halperin. Well, we don't go along with the conservatives say he didn't know anything that was going on and made no decisions. Nobody said that.
Well, no, which was my point earlier. If you're saying, well, sometimes he wasn't all there, then you have to question everything because you can't tell me when
right.
he wasn't.
Exactly.
When he was and wasn't there.
Right. And I thought when Kayleigh McEnany the other day said on the entire thing of Afghanistan that we've always said, he lied. He lied to what all the generals told him. He needed to stay in Afghanistan with 2,500 troops, and his biggest justification was every military advisor told him not to do it.
Right.
And I think with Stephanopoulos, he said, no, there was a debate, but the majority or half or whatever told me not to. But there was another time he said, no, all the generals, not one military leader told me that we should stay. Well, every military leader told him he should stay. Every one of them did. And we thought it was a lie. And she brought up the fact, maybe it's not a lie. Maybe he didn't actually remember. Or he wasn't a part of it. He didn't, he was out of it in that conversation, that he had with it. He goes, maybe that was it. And you and I said yesterday, we went, whoa. Well, that's not good either. Either way is bad. But the fact is then who was pushing that inside the White House to do it? Did Biden actually want to do it? Was he convinced to do it? Do you take somebody who is senile and you push them in a particular direction?
Yeah.
Instead of saying, look, it's time that you step down. The vice president needs to come in. Right. But instead you say, well, this is my opportunity to push what I want.
Right.
Because we all know he couldn't sit out there on the vast majority of days and even answer simple questions. He could not sit there. Think about it. Trump, if you take Biden in a 3 or 4 month period, Trump has probably done, 1,000 times, taken 1,000 times more questions than Biden did.
Oh, my gosh. Well, remember the story, and again, it was a source story at the New York Post talking about his trip to the Middle East, and it was Biden insiders saying, basically, it's refreshing to see a president who has this kind of stamina that can go over and make a trip like this without any issues.
And that's why Democrats are the one on CNN trying to use the argument, but Trump's cognitive abilities. And the one woman that made the comment the other day, the one Democratic strategist, I just can't think of her name at the moment, that was like, he's a different man than the 80s. Yeah. Somebody went, she was born in 73.
Yeah.
And so she was 7 years old to 16 years old when Trump was around in the 80s. Was she actually analyzing what Trump was saying in the 80s?
Right.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Like, oh, my gosh.
Exactly.
She's making it up.
Well, we're old enough to remember. In fact, because we remembered, we were able to go to this thing called the internet and listen to interviews and things that views that he has espoused for decades that he still believes today and is utilizing as president today and putting into policy and in action. Those are things you look for, right? The consistency. It tells you, okay, this is what their convictions are. Whether you agree with them or not, this is what they believe in. And Trump has had a set of beliefs that go back to, my gosh, I don't know, was one of the appearances on Donahue years ago? It may have been. I seem to remember a Donahue appearance because Donahue asking him at the end, so are you gonna? Oh, that's James Kirk. Tell me, Spock. Are you going to run? And that was inevitably...
Oprah asked him.
Yeah, Oprah asked him that. I know that. Larry King asked him multiple times. Dr. Phil asked him a few times.
Was that before or after Trump said to Larry King,
yeah,
you got really bad breath?
Hey, could you move back a little bit?
Seriously.
You have really bad breath.
Really
Has anybody
do.
ever told you that?
Right.
Seriously.
You got to move back a little
Anybody
bit.
ever told you that? Oh, my gosh.
That still may be the greatest thing that Trump has ever said.
Think about it. If you look at what happened with the South African president, and the liberal media going crazy, the meeting at the White House devolved into, it didn't devolve. It was planned. It was strategy. This president is going to tell you if there's an issue with you. You may be, well, that's not proper decorum, and we don't like messy. All right. Go work for a tobacco company. John Boehner or whoever doesn't like that. There's a reason he was elected twice, including the greatest political comeback ever. And a big reason of that is because he's blunt.
866-90 Red Eye.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90 Red Eye on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Well, it was Liberation Day for gas-powered cars.
Yeah.
That's the headline, editorial Wall Street Journal. Liberation Day for gas-powered cars. We'll get to that. It's about time.
And I only have one small issue with it, and it's in the first sentence or first paragraph there from the editorial board. It's not a big issue, but we'll get into it here after the top of the hour. But it is, overall, they're absolutely right. You can't force people into things that they don't want or can't afford. There are a number of things you can look at, over the years, these ideas. You can incentivize here and there. I don't want taxpayer money being used for that. But in terms of the OEMs, they can incentivize, through whatever, if they wanted to do that. I leave that on the private sector. Create something that benefits me and makes my life more pleasurable or efficient, and then we can talk. It has a value at that point.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across America, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. All right, so I did see a lot of rebroadcast of the story that we talked about the other day.
Yeah,
I think it was I think I saw it in the New York Times. I don't know if it was a reprint or the New York Times actually wrote it, but it was the Democrats are planning to spend tens of millions of dollars trying to find the next Joe Rogan. According to Fox News, they have a spreadsheet with 26 different proposals.
This is hilarious.
And we talk about some of the most successful podcasts. They were all liberal to start out with.
Yeah.
And they're still populist liberals. I mean, they're not. They're not the most. But I think what they provide is the fact that in podcasting, because it's the individual who does it. It's not a political party deciding what the podcast is going to be.
Right.
Yeah. It's individuals saying, I want to do a podcast. Now, Rogan was well known, so he had a built-in audience anyway from, all the fighting stuff and acting and everything else. And then he got into brought in, a wide range of guests. And it was, it was more relaxed, but it was funny, and it was conversational, and it worked. But as we remember, in 2020, he was a supporter of Bernie Sanders. Mm-hmm. You cannot get more liberal than Bernie Sanders,
right?
Well, actually, you can now these days. I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
I apologize.
Careful.
All right. Gary,
you need to come into 2025.
Gary, with a totally inaccurate statement. Let me correct myself there.
Yeah.
I forgot words.
You're going back to 2016. That's so 9 years ago.
My cognitive abilities cannot remember back that far. And so, but I was thinking the thing they haven't talked about is they're talking about radio shows, and one of the ideas is a radio show, because that's what the real concern is. How do we get ourselves a red-eye radio?
Well, I was going to say, you mentioned, was it tens of millions of dollars you said? Well, that sounds like a lot of money. Listen, here's what I want to say. I think we need to consider. Is Eric selling out? Just listen, hear me out. First of all, is the check bounced? We just need to think about this green new green deal. Just for a moment. The spending isn't totally out of control. I mean, we're not quite there yet. Tens of millions, you said. By the way, what would they be spending the money on?
Oh, the tens of millions of dollars for the next Joe Rogan? I don't know.
Why does it take tens of millions of dollars? Can't you just look? Last time I looked, it was free.
Right. Let's find somebody. Okay. But how do you? They always get it wrong. By the way, my suggestion would be Blue Eye Radio.
That's right.
And since I'm the good-looking one, Leonardo DiCaprio would play me in the bizarro liberal world, and Rob Reiner would play you.
No, I think
so it'd be Rob.
I think it'd have to be Robert Redford for you.
Oh.
And for me, Tom Segura. I have no idea. I don't know. Patton Oswalt. I mean, I don't
know. But they always get it wrong.
Al Franken, yeah.
But it was like it was just we always go back to Air America because we miss Air America.
Yeah.
And if you haven't heard the story, just very briefly, because it's a good story. Mm-hmm. When I first came to Dallas 25 years ago, May 15th, one of the first things I did was go to the Philadelphia Republican Convention. And back then we were owned by ABC, Disney. Yeah. We were Disney. We were ABC Radio. So everybody stayed, everybody ate in the huge parking lot there of the where the stadium is, and where the arena was. They set up all these tents, and it was a mini city. It really was for the media.
Yeah,
and so they had a big tent there. You could go at any time, really, if you worked for ABC, which we did.
Yeah,
and you could eat lunch, eat dinner, whatever.
Right.
And so it was a mixture of ABC radio talk show hosts that were all conservative and all the all the TV people were there. It was great. I mean, it was just like, and it got to be at times, if you had enough radio people in there with TV people on the other side, it became a great insult fest.
Yeah.
It was just, I mean, it was just awesome.
Yeah.
Well, Al Franken was doing some work for ABC, like a special consultant. And so what they ended up doing was a ton of the people that they had. I mean, that's when I remember interviewing Paul Begala when I was doing the local show, and Paul Begala had no idea how the school lunch program began. And that's how I made my impact on WBAP. They go, who's the new guy that's teaching?
That's torturing Paul Begala.
That's torturing Paul Begala.
Yeah.
And then, they wanted the cooperation between radio and TV. So they kept throwing me people, and they said, hey, okay, today we've got, for your show, if you want Al Franken. I go, oh, all right, I'll take Al Franken. Now, this was before Air America. So he came on, and he was really, really great. And
was it like you were selecting a team member for like dodgeball or something? Okay, I'll take Al Franken. Was it kind of like, all right, fine, I'll take Al Franken. He's probably going to be out soon.
Well, he didn't. Like I said, he didn't have as much of the liberal reputation that he had. He still had a liberal reputation, but not what he became after he was on Air America. But and we've talked about that. It's like, well, you had a guy who was always serious. He never really joked around. He was always angry. It was like that. It wasn't who he was. But he liked me. He followed me around everywhere. And everybody, like in ABC radio, sort of knew it. I got teased. I think Sean Hannity was one of them that teased me back then when Sean was with ABC.
Yeah.
Because they were fun. They go, you know, and Al was like, what are you doing for lunch? What are you doing for lunch? This is really weird. I wanted to interview him, but now this is getting a little bit uncomfortable. And I always thought, what was the bit that he did? And Everybody Likes Me. Remember that one? Stuart Smalley.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the movie, I actually enjoyed the movie. It was so stupid, but I liked his characters.
Yeah.
You know, I liked a lot of the work that he did on SNL. But it really got to be a little bit creepy. And then it was like a year later, or maybe it was 6 months later. I can't remember when they formed Air America. He wouldn't come on the show.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't come on the show at that point. And I don't know why, but he wouldn't come on my radio show at that point. I don't know if I don't think he was still working for ABC. But the problem was, you and I remember when Janine Garofalo and I can't think of the one woman that, I think she's still in radio. I don't know where she is, but the liberal, she was just crazed. This crazed woman. I can't think of her name. And Al Franken. But they do it wrong because they do it from the top down. They sit there and go, all right, the Democratic Party is now going to pick people that can be our next Joe Rogan. It's not done that way.
Yeah,
whether it's what was the lead up to a lot of the podcasts today, which would have been talk radio, for the most part, it wasn't a major corporation that sat there and said, we need to put our heads together, get tens of thousands of dollars, and put it all to tens of millions of dollars, and put it together and figure out from the top down how we can compete against these people, because the podcasts succeed because of their autonomy and individuality. That's why they succeed. And if you can't see that we went from a couple of years ago, people saying, well, I put my faith in the Republican Party and it's not there, and I'm just willing, and I put it in the Democrats, it's not there, that the independence of Joe Rogan wasn't something that was interesting, or some of these other podcasters, that it wasn't an interesting thing, that and a curious thing that people were drawn to, then you don't really understand the media. But after Air America that failed miserably, we were upset when it did. Remember that? Because we had so much fun with them.
I'm pretty sure you cried.
Well, the thing is, you and I are the last ones that ever want to shut up the left.
No,
that's material.
No. Because
it's gold, Jerry.
When are you going to ever get them on an interview and have them admit certain things? But when they're on their own real estate, they're talking to no end, and that's what we use. It's why we play audio from them all the time. It's because getting them on as a guest, that's boring. Because we know they're going to try and milquetoast everything. They're going to try and walk around everything. I have no use for that. I have no time for that. I'm too damn old for that. I want to hear them talk how they normally talk in their own environment. You know?
Right.
It's like going to a zoo. No, I don't want to do that. I want to go on a safari, see them in the wild.
You know, I want to see a serpent.
Exactly.
Feeling comfortable to say whatever he wishes to say.
In the wild, before an elephant comes in and steps on him. Wait a minute.
But it does bring me back. It really does bring me back to when, and this goes back to 94, 95, I believe, you know, when Rush Limbaugh had then hit it big by that time. A lot of radio station people, I remember, because I was a station manager of a small station. I believe it was he went national in 88. And it was either 88 or 89. I wanted to get him before, because I was working at a small station in Niagara Falls. I was a station manager there. And I wanted to get him before one of the Buffalo stations picked him up. And the owner wouldn't let me. She goes, nah, he's too controversial. I go, that's what talk radio is. You know, and she wouldn't. So the station in Buffalo that picked him up only carried him for an hour. They didn't carry all 3 hours. They were like, we got to be careful because they were still full service. They were still playing still playing the music, and it's like the time and the weather is, and the weather forecast, and they really didn't have talk radio, and so they were scared to death of Rush, but they put him on for an hour, and a lot of stations did that. There was like 89, 90, 91, but by the time you got to 94, 95, Rush was established. I think he had his TV show by that time, and you remember the letter that the Rush letter that everybody had, that people had. I mean, he got it was tough in the beginning, but once he convinced stations, it went through the roof.
Yeah,
I mean, it just went through the roof, and so. I'll never forget when the left was like, all right, we got to find somebody. We got to find our own Rush Limbaugh. And it was the late governor of New York, Mario Cuomo. And they just said, he's a great orator. He just he gives great, Rush can't speak like him. And you're right. Mario Cuomo had the way he projected his voice in a speech could be extremely effective. He was good at doing that. Talk radio is not giving a speech.
Right.
It's a completely different ball game.
Right.
And he came on, and that thing fizzled real quick. And it was only on like one day of the week, like Saturday or Sunday or something, is when it was on, and it was a couple of hours. But when he started out, and it was classical music, the bumper music that he had coming from commercials to him was like classical music, and it was like, and that's Tchaikovsky here. I don't know whether it's Tchaikovsky, but it was like, there's Tchaikovsky, and I'm Mario Cuomo.
Yeah.
And it didn't work because they're trying to, it didn't come. Somebody went to him and said, you need to be a talk show host.
Right.
And that's what they're doing now. You need to be an influencer. You need to be a talk show host. And we've got this, we've got all these people that used to use the autopen that now are a part of the Democratic Party that have tens of millions of dollars because of the autopen, and they want to create podcast hosts, liberal podcast hosts that can succeed like Joe Rogan. It's like Rogan it's not a top-down thing. They don't understand it. They don't understand the media.
No, they don't. They really don't.
And even though most conservative talk show hosts work for a major corporation, people do understand, the listeners, the corporation doesn't tell them what to do.
Right.
And they don't.
Nope.
I've only had it once happen to me in my entire life, and that station at the time was individually owned. It wasn't a corporation. I've never had and when we worked for Disney, did Disney ever come and say, don't say that on the air?
No.
Never.
Now, they have asked me to quit parking in the Employee of the Month parking space, but nobody uses it at night.
Yeah, I need to inform you, we haven't worked for ABC for over a decade. So
yeah, exactly. No, we haven't. Remember, we used to have an Employee of the Month parking space out back?
No.
And it was in back.
No.
Well, why would you want it parked out? Why would the Employee of the Month has to park in the back?
No, I didn't know that because I never won it.
Oh, well.
I was never.
That makes one of us.
Was it really in the back?
No, it was right back here. It was. Now.
Oh, in this building.
In this building, yeah.
Oh, that's right.
At ABC, they never had an Employee of the Month.
Oh, okay. It was in the back, but that was if you worked during the day.
Yeah, no night employee gets Employee of the Month.
Well, the parking space was actually further.
Yeah.
So you at least got a parking space in the parking lot.
Back then you could come through that back door. I guess you technically still could. There is a back door, but only UPS uses it.
Okay, makes sense. You're talking about here.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Right. Yeah.
In this building.
Right.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, it had a sign on the wall and everything, a real sign.
You know, if I ended my career today, I could say that in my, 50 years in the workforce?
Yeah.
I've never been employee of. Oh, I was. Yes, I was. When I was a bill collector.
Yeah. I never received Employee of the Month or anything like that.
Yeah, I was Employee of the Month.
Leftover donuts?
Or Bill Collector of the Month.
I received many leftover donuts, and for those, I am grateful.
866-98-RED-EYE.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
It's Red Eye Radio. He's our Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, apparently we had talked about ABC. ABC asked the View hosts to cool it on politics. Well, we worked for Disney ABC, and this is how bad they are. We worked for Disney ABC. I worked there for, 8 years?
Yeah.
8 years for ABC Disney as a talk show host. They never once. But the left gets on. And the leftist management has to tell the leftist talk show host to rein it in a little bit. We'll get to that coming up here in a little bit because that was just hilarious when that came out. The horrendous, the reaction, some of the protests yesterday. You actually sent me a text yesterday about one of the pro-Hamas, pro-murder protests that was going on.
Well, it actually was a couple of different groups that you would suspect immediately would come out and support the person who's accused of the killings. And the question is, how many of the radical protesters and protest groups are going to be out there? It's inevitable that there is going to be support for him. It's inevitable that you're going to have more and more people call him a hero. And it's sickening. It's just sickening.
I know.
You're listening to Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios.
We are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. So I'm just looking at this again. I really think somebody needs to check James Carville and his cognitive abilities. And I'm being serious here because he says one thing one day, then contradicts it. The message is completely different the next day.
Yeah.
And we had talked about this yesterday, how he is saying the identity politics is wrong. We need to stop with the identity politics. We need to stop with the radical transgender movement. We've got to be sane. And then he comes out, and this was 2 days ago, came out and said, I'd vote for AOC. What?
Yeah.
And then the story comes out yesterday. Carville shreds Democrats' state chair, tells progressives to start their own pronoun party.
Wow.
He's just, and he's like, the problem with these people from the progressive, whatever the F that is, that come into these state parties that didn't do anything, that have outstanding Democratic elected officials. He's fighting with the governor. We finally have a Democratic governor. And this guy exemplifies to me what's wrong with that wing of the party. He noted one quote attributed to the state chair, because he's looking, for example, at Arizona that has a Democratic governor.
All right.
And two senators. And this Democrat head coming in and criticizing, both of them. He said they come into these state parties, they don't do anything. He said, why don't you just shut up anyway, because you haven't gotten elected to anything, and why don't you pay attention and work for the people that are out there and not just try to win elections, but actually winning elections.
Yeah, right.
And so he's talking about the fact that, as we know, whether it's Gallego or Kelly or the governor, they try to pretend that they're not on the far left.
Mm-hmm.
They are. They vote on the far left, but they don't say radical things.
Right.
They do radical things. They just don't say it.
Right.
And so the incredible thing is he's endorsing that while at the same time saying he'd vote for AOC for president.
Yeah.
Yet identity politics and screaming too loud, promoting that you're a whacked out liberal instead of just being quiet.
Right.
And pretending you're more moderate.
Mm-hmm.
He's all over the place.
Yeah.
So
well, but isn't it kind of isn't he an example of what's going on with the party? I mean, he really is exuding that chaos.
You mean because both sides of his mind are going back and forth from one side to the other?
Well, that's it. He can't. He wants to. Part of his brain is going. I mean, it really is the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde thing. You don't want the radical monster to come out, but sorry, you can't help it. Sorry, Lon Chaney, there's a full moon. Lon Chaney Jr., I guess.
Right. The serpent is going to appear.
Yeah, exactly.
Am I a serpent or that's, by the way, that was a long time ago. People would call James Carville serpent because his head sort of looks like a snake's head.
Right. We don't like going after people for how they look, but if that's the way you look, I mean, it's sorry, we didn't make them look that way. But no, the whole
and I did not create that name. I want to make it clear.
It was widely used.
It was just the first time it was used. I mean, I never noticed it when somebody said serpent. I'm like, who are you talking about? They goes, James Carville, look at his head. I'm like, oh my gosh.
No. Yeah. Pretty much the eyes. But anyway, we're not, listen, anywho, the thing is, the chaos on the left is that, oh, we need to stop this. So what are we going to do? What we need to do is a comprehensive search for our Joe Rogan. They can't. Well, we need to hire more women of color. But the identity politics thing is wrong. I mean, they're in chaos. What they see is I think with Carville specifically, what he sees is, as a strategist, what isn't working. Okay, the pronoun party comment, going after the identity politics. That's his strategy mind. That's the half of the brain that works in strategy. And he knows, as a result of November of 24, it isn't working. And we've been, in fact, noticing that for a while. Remember Stacey Abrams. This is after Terry McAuliffe lost for governor in Virginia. And she was asked about identity politics, and she said, well, no, we need to be doing more of that. It is working, right? It didn't work for her. and she's, but what they think is, the radicals believe, well, it's because we're not doing enough. We're not doing enough of it. People just don't see it. And this is where we get back to how their brain works. The comment by Carville that he would vote for AOC, well, of course he would. That's James Carville. The strategist will tell you why her campaign is going to be flawed, but the liberal that is James Carville is still going to do it because his brain doesn't think any other way.
You made me just think of this audio cut, and I actually have it ready to go, but it just, and I didn't tell you I had it ready to go.
Yeah.
But it sort of fits in with exactly what you said when we talk about, James Carville talking about the insanity of the identity politics movement and the radical transgender movement. That it's insane. I mean, these things are, it's racism and misogyny, and it's blunt what they are. And Carville recognizes it, and other Democrats have recognized it. You and I have always asked, and then we throw in the anti-Semitism here because of the murders. 2 nights ago, and you wonder, how do they get to this point? How are these students screaming, free Palestine or advocating the killing of Jews? How do you get to that point?
Right.
What is it? And we've always talked about the fact that we know on identity politics, we've always said, we figured it out one day. We said, they believe they're racist and they have guilt. And if they believe they're racist, they believe you're a racist. This is really interesting because this was Jordan Peterson talking to Douglas Murray from Great Britain, written a ton of books. And it's really interesting because they delve into that. But they're talking more about anti-Semitism, which is the same kind of thing. It's the same thing as the racism of identity politics or the misogyny of the radical transgender movement. But here we go. Here's part of it. And it's really interesting because it touches on the things that we have said.
But every time this I mulled on this subject in recent years, the Grossman's rule absolutely applied. People using the Jewish state, just as they have the Jewish people throughout history, as a projection mechanism for their own failings. And the place where I realized this became very relevant to the American university and the Western universities was, what were the things the students were accusing the Jewish state of? Genocide, ethnic cleansing, white supremacy. So you would laugh at that one. They've never been to Israel.
But that's a good one.
But anyway, so ethnic cleansing, genocide, white supremacy, the various sins they will always lob at Israel. And they were throwing this at Israel from October the 7th, as they had in the years before. But they really got a push on it after that. And I was thinking throughout this period, as I saw the protests in the West, I thought, why are these terms so familiar? The conclusion I came to was, and it actually was a follow-on from my previous book, The War on the West, where I talked about what was being taught to a generation. And as you know, one of the things I said in that book was, we are teaching young people born in the 21st century in America and the rest of the West that they are guilty by dint of being born here. You are guilty of colonialism because some of your ancestors may have engaged in colonialism. You're guilty of genocide. You carry the guilt of genocide because 300 years ago, people who may not be ancestors of yours but look like you did this thing, and so on and so on. And I said in The War on the West that this was a very, very dangerous thing because it's a mechanism of guilt with no alleviation mechanism for forgiveness. There's no way to alleviate the guilt. You're just being told you're guilty and you're stuck with it.
Now, you can see the protests as a manifestation of that attempt to expiate.
Exactly. One of the conclusions I come to is that this protest movement has been projection on a vast scale. The students accuse Israel of things that the students have been told that they themselves are guilty of. That they themselves,
well, they see Israel as the vanguard of Western colonialism.
Exactly.
It's the whole story.
So this is a giant mechanism of projection.
All right. I just wanted to stop it there for a moment because I started thinking, because we've said before in identity politics, the reason, and this all started, this goes back years ago when Eric and I were working together, and it's like, we take an opinion on anything, and, the left will call up and go, that's racist. But there's nothing racist about it. Right. How do you get to that point? Why are you always accusing us of being racist? And one day we thought about it and went, oh, my gosh, they're the party that practices identity politics. They judge people by groups. The radical transgender movement had not come to the forefront at that point.
Right.
When you and I were having these discussions.
Right.
It was simply the whole racism thing. And we're like, how did they get to that point? What is it? And we realized, oh, my God, they're projecting. It's what they believe. They believe they're racist.
Yep.
And so if they're racist, of course, if you oppose them or they have their feelings of racism, well, what Douglas Murray is saying is the fact that this is what they've been taught in college. They've been taught this in the schools, that because of who they are, they're racist. I think it may be more than that because I look at it and say, could anybody have convinced you in college that you were a racist if you were not?
Right. Yeah.
Are young people that suggestible that you can throw something that is completely absurd or untrue at them? Is it possible to brainwash a significant portion of college students? We know you can brainwash them on current events. You can brainwash them on ideology. But when you do this, when you do what they're talking about, you're attacking that person and saying because of what somebody did before you, you hold the guilt for it, which, of course, is absurd.
Right.
And why is it absurd? Because we view ourselves as autonomous individuals. Because somebody with white skin committed a crime, I'm not liable. Right. Because somebody with black skin committed a crime, if you have black skin, you're not liable.
Right.
You've got nothing, your skin color has nothing to do with it. If you have a like-minded narrative and mindset, and you have the same skin color, and your mindset is, I can murder somebody, that's the problem, not the skin color.
Right.
And so, but and that is, well, we'll put it this way, we're doomed if kids are that, you can throw these kind of suggestions at them that you have guilt by association.
Yeah.
But I guess people are brainwashed all the time, so there's a significant portion of the population you could brainwash that into, that you're a racist because your distant ancestor was a racist.
Right.
Which I wouldn't buy, you wouldn't buy, well, Alan wouldn't buy it. I don't care whether it was in college or high school. If somebody came up and said, by the way, you're a racist because white people own slaves, well, I go, shut up.
If someone is accused of a crime, is their entire family guilty of the crime?
Right, exactly. It doesn't make any sense, that narrative, because nobody really buys that.
Right.
But is it true when it comes to things like the anti-Semitism? Because that's the one thing. Anybody who's if you're a thinker in any way, you're wondering, how do people get to this point?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because they're so passionate about it. Is it a virtual performance? Virtue signaling performance? Is it all performance art? Do some of them actually buy into it? Do people actually feel guilty because they're told they should feel guilty, not because what they have done, but because someone, I mean, that's like saying you've got blonde hair and somebody has blonde hair, committed a crime, therefore you're guilty.
Exactly.
866-90 Red Eye.
We'll be right back with more Red Eye Radio with Eric Harley and Gary McNamara.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. And to think about it, I mean, because the mindset of anti-Semitism, the mindset of identity politics, racism, and the misogyny of the radical transgender movement is actually embedded and has been embedded in our higher institutions of learning. Higher takes on a completely different word now, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Our institutions of higher learning in the United States. And you wonder, if these are the best and brightest, how can they so easily fall in, to the trap that they believe, in order to practice identity politics, that their identity, which is a physical characteristic most likely, or a sexual characteristic, defines who the group that they have the same physical characteristics or sexual characteristics belong to.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Gary McNamara and Eric Harley talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios, this is Red Eye Radio.
All across the USA, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Good morning. Well, Disney CEO Bob Iger and other executives have reportedly asked the co-host of The View to turn down their heated political rhetoric.
All right.
Multiple sources told the Daily Beast, again, not a conservative media outlet, that both Iger and ABC News president recently suggested that the daytime talk show panel be less antagonistic on political issues, though the recommendation was reportedly not taken too seriously. The co-hosts of The View have become known as being some of President Donald Trump's fiercest media critics since he began his political career. This is from Fox News, by the way.
Yeah.
This is what our audience wants. It isn't it going to look kind of bad if we're all of a sudden not talking about politics, one source said, paraphrasing how the co-host replied to ABC and the Disney executives. The outlet reported that the ABC president convened a meeting with The View's executive producer and its host and suggested the panel needed to broaden its conversations beyond the predominant focus on politics. The ABC president pointed to successful, less political statement with famous guests and suggested the co-host focus on that kind of content. The sources described how the show's host pushed back against the suggestion, with Anna Navarro reacting the most forcefully. She told ABC News that audiences want the host to speak out on political issues. Look, it's a big pain in the butt for the management. Yeah. Because they know they can still pull in good ratings with that kind of a show. And one of the problems that they're concerned about, I mean, do you think, I tell you, there isn't a management I know out there that would want to have to hire lawyers to listen and watch your show in real time to make sure you don't defame anybody that could cost the company hundreds of millions of dollars.
Right. And I think it probably was inevitable that it would get to the point, again, if the source story is accurate and true, that the parent company would say, hey, tone it down. Remember, they were doing that with ESPN. Oh, we've decided we're going to have less political views. And Stephen A. Smith just laughed.
All right, I'll do my own political podcast then.
You know, that's it. It's all right. What do you want to? The whole point of The View is to talk about current topics. However, it's not what you do, it's how you do it.
That's true.
You know, there are plenty of places to go and get opinions. CNN, the newsroom at the Washington Post. You can go get opinions from the left in many different places. You know, when the Discovery Group was coming in and John Malone, who is with Liberty Media, but part of that group, and as they came in and basically became the new, that group became the new ownership at CNN, Malone talked in an interview somewhere, I forget where it was, but he said, we need to get back to just reporting the news. He was specifically talking about CNN. And you and I went, boring.
Yeah.
Because
right.
it's I don't want the opinionated stuff to go away. Don't call yourself a journalist. Don't call it news. Here's what I would say. If you want to do the news, do a 2-minute news segment and then go back to the whatever show it is, whoever it is, Anderson Cooper. I don't care who it is. Anderson Cooper and all of them, they think they're journalists. They're not. They're opinion makers, and that's okay. Just call it an opinionated or opinion-based programming. That's fine. It's what we do. We're not journalists. We don't pretend to be. What changes is how you do it. Because when you get to the point of saying things that aren't true, there are so many potential liabilities in what they do. because at The View, they're part of ABC News. Just like Good Morning America. Is Stephanopoulos still unhappy? He's not happy. Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
The Schmoopy episode was on when I got up to come to work last night.
Was it?
So we're talking Schmoopy's husband.
Yeah. And nobody cares. Nobody cares. Go ahead and let them issue their opinion. But it's not just Good Morning America or ABC This Week, where they're fighting and they just have this angry look now on their face. The same at Meet the Press. The only smile you'll find on a Sunday morning is CBS Sunday Morning and Jane Pauley. She's still smiling. Seems to be happy in what she's doing. But these opinion makers on these other shows are just, man, they're angry. They're angry. We've known Stephanopoulos wasn't happy for years. Doesn't come off as a happy person at all. Because they are angry. The View was angry. But the point of The View is to issue opinion. None of them pretend to be journalists. One pretends to be a comedian, but none of them pretend to be a journalist. They're there to issue an opinion. When you get into saying things that carry a great liability, you have to, even in issuing opinion, it's just like reporting the news. You can't say, here are the facts when it's not true, and here's what we think about it. You and I are very careful about saying, again, especially with source stories, we've seen news organizations get burned. Bret Baier is one of them, and we like Bret Baier and trust Bret Baier. But on the story that he had in this would have been 2016, that there was word that Hillary could be indicted on the whole email thing, and it was a source story, we said, you better be right. You better be right, or you're going to get burned. And he got burned. And, those are things that you have to, be careful about, you and I, because we don't have sources. We're not journalists. It's not what we do. We talk about what's in the news. But even when we do that, we're very careful about, listen, if this is accurate and true, including this story about Disney asking them to tone it down, if it's accurate and true. Is there a lot of liability there? Not really, but it's our practice nonetheless, because it's the only thoughtful way, I think, to have a real, true conversation about it. You should want to, in fact. It shouldn't be, you and I have never been, there's never been any training coming in, well, this is what you have to know. Here, if you look up at this dry erase board, we're going to write up here, okay, this is what you have to do. These are all the rules, and nobody ever told us that. Nobody ever had to tell us that. Because you should want to be thoughtful when issuing opinion, because what your opinion, what you and your credibility are based on is that opinion you're going to issue. And if it's something that if it's issued on something that's completely false, your opinion then is in the wash. It's in the drink. It doesn't matter. It's, so if you don't have that thoughtful approach and qualify it to begin with, if you don't care about the truth ultimately, then your opinion really doesn't matter.
You made when you talked about the fact that there was no formal training. When I first became a talk show host, I had heard it, but I really had no idea about what the legalities of defamation were.
Right.
I didn't know that there's a difference between how you can talk about a private person as compared to a public person. Mm-hmm. I didn't have any training on what was defamation and what was not, or what was acceptable and what was not.
Right.
I just knew I wasn't going to lie.
Mm-hmm.
So I never
Right.
ran into those
Your
problems.
focus was on the truth.
My focus was always commenting on the truth. And if
Yep.
I wasn't sure, I'd say, I'm not sure about it. It's one of the reasons, because once in a while people say, how come you guys didn't give your comment on this crime thing that happened last night? And the answer 99% of the time is we don't nearly have all the facts to make any type of even speculation on it.
Right. A number of crime stories over the years, in fact, or an ongoing trial for someone.
Right.
If there's not enough information coming from that trial to know what happened, when the jury comes out, makes a decision, or a judgment is made, we can go back and we can analyze and say, all right, here's what was presented, and here's what the jury found. Here's the judgment, and we can analyze that way. But my opinion in that case doesn't matter as much as the facts matter, anywhere close to what the facts matter. You know, that's should be the goal of everyone, is getting down to the truth. We talk about the Biden thing with the cognitive issues and the use of the autopen and everything else. I can't tell you, but there are people who can tell us what happened. And it's important that we find out the truth. I suspect, because we know that there are cognitive issues, nobody's even debating that anymore. But I suspect a number of things with the reported use of the autopen, a number of things were faulty in terms of his actions as president. And I can't prove that. I'm the first to tell you I can't prove that. But there's a way to find out.
You know, with the whole View thing with Iger, and by the way, we did mention that both Iger and the ABC News president are men, so it's the patriarchy, telling the women of the View what to do. We'll give you that one. We'll help you along on the View today.
Yeah.
I can't imagine a case of any company that I work for. This is what I find interesting. How many legal notes have they been given that they've been forced to say? How long would you last in talk radio if you had to keep putting on corrections as long as they have on The View? How long would you last as a conservative talk radio host in this business?
Right.
Who would put up with that?
Well, where does the scrutiny come from? The scrutiny comes from the public.
Yeah.
Now, you know, they point out in the coverage of this story about Disney execs asking the hosts on The View to tone it down. They point out the fact that they still have a healthy audience. You know, they still do very well. I can't tell you why. I've always questioned that. That makes me scratch my head as to who's watching it. But again,
they're no longer watched at any dentist's office or dealerships.
Yeah, exactly.
They aren't.
Right.
Nobody wants that.
I went in for an oil change. You say that. It's funny because the last two times I went in for an oil change, the TV was on. The TV was on WFAA locally, to be clear. And then at 9 o'clock, The View comes on.
The View comes on.
They were watching the local morning broadcasts, which they do a great job. It's weather, obviously that's of interest. They open up at 8, and so they turn it on local news, right? And then The View comes on at 9. When I went in a few days ago to get an oil change again, no TV. It wasn't even turned on.
Well, I remember my dentist, I think he had Fox News on, whatever, and they got too many complaints. So he said, okay, this is going back 15, 20 years ago. I'll put on CNN. It's more middle of the road. Too many complaints.
Yeah.
And so you go into so many doctors' offices and dentist offices today. And what do they have on TV?
HGTV.
Exactly. You read
but I have
that's what they have on. It's like, okay, can we put a house together without people complaining or fix up something?
You can't, because if I'm watching it for any amount of time, it's basically it's time for California on a budget. Marie and Tom each make $30,000 a year. Their budget for this house is $950,000 with an improvement budget of $250,000. It's not.
You're upset at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what I notice is that my dealership, every time I walk into my dealership, you know what's on? Soap operas.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Nobody's watching it, but they have to have something on there. And I'm thinking to myself, yeah, you never think about it. You want to entertain, but most people are looking at their phones anyway and have their, earbuds on. So, but still the TV, I mean, it's like I wonder if there's like in dealerships, somebody who pays attention do that. Make sure it's not on any opinionated news.
Yeah.
Any pro or anti-Trump, any pro or anti-Trump programming has to be off.
Well, the best thing you can do, actually, is not have a TV.
Yeah.
Give people free Wi-Fi and let it be.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at JJ Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on compliance, safety, accountability. Compliance, Safety, Accountability, or CSA, is the FMCSA Safety, Compliance, and Enforcement Program. Its goal is to hold motor carriers and drivers accountable for highway safety and to reduce crashes, injuries, and fatalities on our roads. CSA does this by assessing the safety performance of motor carriers and drivers based on data collected during roadside inspections, crash reports, and FMCSA investigations. Based on the data that is compiled, motor carriers are assigned a score. The carrier is then grouped with other carriers who have had a similar number of safety events. Carrier scores within the group are then ranked to determine intervention priority. Low scores are better, so carriers with the highest scores are those that are most likely to be targeted for intervention by the FMCSA. Interventions range in severity and may include warning letters, roadside, off-site, or on-site inspections, civil penalties, or operation out-of-service orders. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Coming up, more with Gary McNamara and Eric Harley. It's Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, and I'm Gary McNamara. Welcome, and good morning. Thanks so much for being here. Coming up on the bottom of the hour, more of the talk on some of the names coming out of those people that surrounded Biden and how quiet many of those people have been with these accusations being out there. Comers, they've got to call him. They've got to call him before Congress. I believe that they will. So we'll get to that coming up on the bottom of the hour. Plus, reading this editorial. Lead editorial from the Wall Street Journal. Liberation Day for gas-powered cars. The Senate votes to end California's EV quota. Will Newsom give it up? We'll get to that too because it's fascinating, what that required and now how we're moving in that opposite direction and the mandates gone,
right.
Subsidies hopefully gone soon.
Yeah.
Catch all 5 hours of the show live every night on the Red Eye Radio app. Available in the App Store. Red Eye Radio.
And I'm Gary McNamara along with Eric Harley. So just looking at some of the audio that we have from yesterday. And I really think that, you at Axios come out and start talking about giving the people's names that are not all familiar names with who was surrounding the president, who were these aides. And, I mean, it really heated up yesterday. I don't know whether it was telling the names or talking about the whistleblower that Ed Martin says he has, who came forward and said basically it's 3 people around that controlled the president and told him what to do. And they made money off of the autopen.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, he said he doesn't know whether he believes that. And we think that's a very smart thing if you're an investigator in something like that, because, you may have the opposition trying to throw false information at you. So you come out and claim something and you lose credibility.
Yeah.
But the fact is that both those stories just blew it up yesterday. Here's Byron Donalds, Representative Donalds, on Fox Business News yesterday with Varney and Company as they discuss this.
To listen to what Axios reporter Alex Thompson had to say about the inner circle controlling Biden at the end of his term. Watch this.
The people that were in charge were Mike Donilon, Steve Ricchetti, Bruce Reed, Anthony Bernal, the First Lady's chief of staff, the First Lady, and Annie Tomasini. Those were the people that saw him the most and that had the most control over what he was doing and his day-to-day.
Well, clearly, Congressman, he is naming names. And we have the Washington Post columnist, Sally Quinn, accusing former First Lady of elder abuse. What do you say to that, Congressman? Elder abuse.
It is elder abuse. It is. There's no doubt about that. And all of these officials that were in the Biden White House, as far as I'm concerned, they need to come in front of the Oversight Committee because questions need to be answered. Last thing I will say on this is, depending on when the president truly was not in control of his mental faculties, a lot of the stuff that he did as president, in my view, should be invalidated. And the reason why is because you can't use an autopen to run the country. It has to be from the mental capabilities and the physical capabilities of the person elected to be commander-in-chief. And so if Joe Biden could not execute the duties of his office, then why are we living under a lot of the decisions that was made by the Biden White House? So there's a lot of investigations that need to occur on this matter. This is a major scandal, in my view, the biggest one in presidential history. We can now put Watergate to bed because the autopen is now in front of us.
No, I mean, it's like you said, this really is so much bigger than Watergate. Quite potentially, it's the greatest presidential scandal ever.
And one of the reasons it is because when you heard Alex Thompson there naming the names,
yeah,
he wasn't naming the names on Fox News.
Right.
He wasn't giving his information. This wasn't an interview with the Washington Times or the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
It was on MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
So they're on MSNBC, they're discussing who was surrounding Biden and therefore who may have been influencing his presidency or taking over his presidency. It's on MSNBC.
Well, and like I said earlier, I was stunned by an accurate headline that didn't have some kind of jab at the House GOP, because here it is. House, from NBC News, to be clear, House Republicans to zero in on autopen use as part of investigation into Biden's health. It's an accurate headline. The subheadline, the probe comes amid renewed scrutiny around Biden's mental and physical fitness in office. Where's the accusation that the GOP, the House Republicans, are doing this? Because typically it's without any proof. House Republicans are zeroing in on the autopen. In other words, they qualify what the headline is going to be.
Well, any debate that you have in Washington and anything that you're promoting has to survive the cross-examination of the other side.
Yes.
For example, if you see the president on, illegal immigration, and even deporting criminal illegal immigrants, or if they deport a mother who's here illegally and she decides to take the child with her and it's agreed with the family, that's deportation of a child, which it isn't. Or when we've talked about illegal immigration and they simply say immigrants and don't specify between immigrants and illegal immigrants. And so that's a weakness to their argument, but they're at least attempting on an argument. And even with Garcia, they tried to steer the debate to, well, we just want to talk about due process here, not whether he's a criminal or not. And you lose that. You may have a point, but you lose that in the arena of ideas with the public. In this one, though, what's the cross-examination? So far, the cross-examination has been, well, Trump's lost his cognitive abilities too. It doesn't apply to this.
Doesn't apply to this at all.
It doesn't apply to this, and it doesn't apply.
Yeah.
They have nothing on this because Jake Tapper released the book. And whatever Jake Tapper's Jake Tapper's motivation was, all right, give me another beer. We're starting Memorial Day earlier. But whatever his motivation was, and I do believe that part of the motivation was to let the media off the hook. You cover your butt by saying, we were fooled by all these people. Even Tapper's having to admit that he wasn't fooled. He just went along and didn't ask questions, which we said, then you're not a journalist. You don't have any, because if you don't have observational skills to see that Biden's cognitive abilities were going down, then you shouldn't be in the media. I don't care whether you're a pure journalist or you're an influencer or opinion maker. If you lose the ability to see what is self-evident in front of you and you try to make a case against it and get pushback. I heard this yesterday. I forgot who said it, that really the end of media credibility was the whole Biden thing.
Yeah.
Because everybody saw it.
Right.
And so you were being told not to believe your own eyes.
Right.
That you were part of a conspiracy with Republicans when you had a lot of independents, even Democrats, saying, that's not true. But Biden can't even stand up and answer a question. Maybe he shouldn't be. Maybe we should have a primary. Maybe we should have other people, that come in and do it. But I don't know. This only goes in one direction.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of even if the testimony, and the testimony might not be public. It might be behind closed doors. I don't know.
Right.
But if it's public, if it's public in the House, what does Jasmine Crockett say? Trump? Doesn't apply. As soon as you go there, you lose. As soon as you try to make the inaccurate comparison that Trump is just like Biden, that his cognitive state has degraded just like Biden, nobody buys it. No one.
It will be. I think it will be what we've had a couple of responses. Schumer, Jeffries, Whoopi, basically saying, "Listen, we shouldn't be." I mean, I can see it right now with the liberals on the panel. Well, we shouldn't be here today. We should be moving on with what's going on with the country today, which, of course, negates all of the facts, including the biggest part of the facts that we are living under the actions, in part, of Joe Biden still.
Well,
his presidential actions still govern Americans, and we have to question and scrutinize every single one of them.
It's tough to say it's time to move on when some of the most interesting programming on this and on all the different questions is coming from MSNBC.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough for Democrats to win that argument of moving on when every day when you turn on Morning Joe, that's what the discussion is. The majority of the discussion is on Biden and his cognitive state and the cancer and the people around him, because when we played that Stuart Varney and Company audio clip, what they had played with Alex Thompson and Jake Tapper, that again was on MSNBC.
Yeah.
And so some of the most important audio cuts, the news of naming the names around the president, therefore giving you, let me use the correct legal terminology, persons of interest.
Yeah.
Can't call them suspects.
No, you can't.
Persons of interest involved in this, that was huge.
Yeah.
And when it was pointed out yesterday by a number of people I saw saying nobody from his inner circle has responded at all. Nobody.
Right.
Nobody's responded.
Right.
They're as quiet as you can be. Those are serious charges. The charge that a group of people saw an incapacitated president and the family was a part of it and said, we make the decisions, not him.
Yeah.
If he's coherent one day, he can make the decision, because that was the other thing. Oh, the Republicans are making it sound like this was, even Halpern was on this with Joe Scarborough, which was inaccurate. Republicans are trying to say he didn't make any decisions at all. Nobody's saying that.
No.
If he didn't make one decision, that's enough.
Well,
if you had, and the book is saying that they kept bad news from him. They isolated him. They didn't want him to know the truth on a variety of different world issues, what was going on. They didn't want him to know the truth of the polling. They didn't want him to know anything that might be perceived as negative, because they didn't know how he'd respond to it.
Right.
What I wonder is this in the book? Is there any part of the book where they say, we were scared to hell when he went out just to give a statement, and then not knowing whether he was going to turn around and then take one question or take two questions? Were they panicking behind the scenes for that? I haven't seen it. It might be in the book. I haven't seen any excerpt or anybody bring that up yet.
Yeah. I have to believe right now there's some panic going on.
Oh, there has to be, because you can't use the argument. Well, you can't use Schumer's argument. It's time to move on.
No, you can't, because again, every one of his actions as president, as Joe Biden, are, have to be scrutinized, because many of those we are still living under. But even any executive order that may have been reversed, it governed the lives of people while it was effective.
Yeah. Well, what you had is the allegation is you've had unelected people making the decision for the president of the United States, not the president. That's the biggest scandal in American presidential history.
Right.
That's going to be said a lot now. Byron Donald said, you've seen other people say it.
And then the motivation for which, right? Of if it was money, this gets back to the whistleblower, and if that's true and accurate, and they were doing it, 3 insiders were doing it to make money, gain money for access. Oh my gosh!
Well, not only that, you're getting into the most important part, which is the substance of what might have happened in this entire thing.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm talking about is it's such a damn interesting mystery that will draw people into it. You can't stop talking about it because of the interest in it. Going, this is the biggest scandal. Well, what's it about? That Biden wasn't really in charge. The people around him who weren't elected were doing it. That's a shadow government. Oh, my gosh. That's as interesting as you could possibly get in politics. It's very easily understood.
Yep.
And it's like, you got to be kidding me.
Write the series on that. Put that on Netflix.
866-90-RED-EYE.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
It's Red Eye Radio. We are Eric Harley. Well, we are Red Eye Radio. He is Eric Harley, not we.
It's not a two-man job.
I'm sorry. This is
me.
I'm sorry. Eric, your pronoun is not we.
No, it isn't.
He's Eric Harley. I'm Gary McNamara. Can I go home early?
I think you've already done that.
Download our Red Eye Radio app today, and you can listen when and where you choose. Our show is over in an hour. After the show is over, our show becomes our podcast.
That's right.
It's that simple, and so you can listen anytime that you want. If you can't catch all 5 hours, you can listen to our Red Eye Radio app and our podcast. And during the show, if you can't listen to one of our great radio stations, which is the recommended way, we still do stream live all 5 hours on our Red Eye Radio app.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.